What's up? I'm B, and whether you're watching this on YouTube or you are listening to the podcast, I hope you are having an amazing day. I missed you last week. I didn't get a chance to post because life got busy, my body got tired, and I was like, probably a good idea to rest instead of pushing myself too hard. So I did take a week off, but I am back. I'm ready to go. And today we are reacting to somebody that I have never reacted to on the channel before because they're not a content creator. As I'm sure you can tell by both the title and thumbnail of this video, I will be reacting to Harrison Butker's recent commencement speech that he gave at Benedictine University. Haven't seen it yet. I've seen a lot of people talking about it though, and from what I have seen, it has not been received well. So I figured let's go ahead, based on the criticism that I've seen of it and some of like the tidbits I've seen of what he's talking about in the speech, I figured this might be an interesting video to react to. I don't want to say I enjoyed reacting to Pearl 2 weeks ago. I guess it was interesting to bring someone new on the channel is what I'll say. It's not that I was like, oh, I love reacting to Pearl. This is so fun. It was very frustrating, but I liked having someone new to talk about and to react to. And so with this speech coming out and a lot of the feedback that I saw being given about it, I was like, okay, this might be something interesting to talk about on the channel as well. So that's what we're doing. Just a little bit of background about Harrison Butker. I don't know a ton about him, but he is a kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs. He is 28 years old, and he has been married since 2018 to his wife, Isabel. And apparently he has some controversial beliefs. So let's go ahead and talk about him. Before we get into that, though, let's go ahead and do Win for the Week. If you are new around here, a Win for the Week is just where you share something positive that happened to you over the past week that you would consider a win. It can be big or small, but if it made you laugh, if it made you feel grateful, if it brought you joy, if you would consider it a win, I want to hear about it and celebrate with you. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can leave it in the comments section down below. And if you are listening to the podcast on Spotify, you can leave it in the Q&A for this particular episode. My win for the week is finally getting some more maternity clothes. I don't know about you, but I do not love clothes shopping. I like shopping for makeup, for home goods, for food. I'll shop for that all day long. Clothing shopping, just not my favorite thing. And so I've been putting it off for a while. A few weeks ago, my mom took me shopping and we got some things that fit nicely, that are maternity clothes. But just since then, I've been like, I'll get to it eventually. And then on Wednesday, I was going into the office and having a little bit of a tough time finding something that fit and that I felt good in. And so my husband was like, hey, when you get home, we're going to go shopping. And so I got home and we went to the mall. We got some things. And then after that, I did order a few more pieces online. So those should be coming in soon. And I'm excited about it. I did it. I was kind of finally forced into buying some new things. So that's good though. They'll fit and I'll be more comfortable and I won't be super frustrated getting dressed. So that is my win for the week and I can't wait to hear yours and celebrate with you. Let's get into the speech.
Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2024, I would like to start off by congratulating all of you for successfully making it to this achievement today. I'm sure your high school graduation was not what you had imagined, and most likely, neither was your first couple years of college. By making it to this moment through all the adversity thrown your way from COVID, I hope you learned the important lessons that suffering in this life is only temporary. As a group, you witnessed firsthand how bad leaders...
Wait, that's wild. I don't think I realized that kids who graduated in 2020, graduated high school in 2020 are now graduating college. Because if you graduate high school in 2020, then you would do fall in 2020 to 2021, 2021 to 2022, 2022 to 2023, 2023 to 2024. Oh my gosh, that is wild.
Who don't stay in their lane can have a negative impact on society. It is through this lens that I want to take stock of how we got to where we are and where we want to go as citizens and yes, as Catholics. One last thing before I begin.
Okay.
I want to be sure to thank President Minnis and the board for their invitation to speak. When President Minnis first reached out a couple of months ago, I had originally said no. You see, last year I gave the commencement address at my alma mater, Georgia Tech, and I felt that one graduation speech was more than enough, especially for someone who isn't a professional speaker. But of course, President Minnis used his gift.
Maybe he should have stuck with that original gut feeling, because, like I said, the response to this has not been great. Also, Benedictine College posted this on their YouTube channel as it has 1.6 million views right now, and the comments are turned off. So you can't even see what other people are saying about it, like directly on their YouTube channel.
Of persuasion and spoke to the many challenges you all faced throughout the COVID fiasco and how you missed out on so many milestones the rest of us older people have taken for granted. While COVID might have played a large role throughout your formative years, it is not unique. Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values in media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder. Our own nation is led by a man who publicly—
Wait, sir, we are not even 2 minutes in. Okay, I gotta go back and listen to that whole list again.
While COVID might have played a large role throughout your formative years, it is not unique. Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values in media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder.
Okay, so he's stating that the following things are negative: abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, and other forms of degeneracy. Abortion, I understand, just because he's a Catholic at a Catholic college. Like, I mean, I don't know why you're talking about it in a graduation speech, but like, I would understand that he would not be in support of abortion. We've talked about this multiple times. I think that it's important for you to know what your own beliefs are and for you to be like, this is what I believe for me, but I understand that I can't enforce this on somebody else. I understand that, like, not everybody has the same religious convictions that I do. I would imagine he's not somebody who perceives things that way, though, just because he is bringing this up at a commencement speech, but we'll see where the rest of the speech goes. Anyway, I do understand that I cut him off in the middle of a sentence, so I'm like, in my head, I'm speculating on what he's gonna say, or like additional details that he might go into regarding like surrogacy, IVF, euthanasia, etc. But I should probably just listen to what he's actually saying instead of just speculating and then giving my opinions on what he might have possibly said as made up in my head. So.
Our nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. He has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people, it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice. He is not alone. From the man behind the COVID lockdowns to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America, they all have a glaring thing in common. They are Catholic.
This is something that Paul and Morgan brought up when they did their 24 hours with Josh Benson about how Biden supports abortion, but he claims to be a Catholic. And for me, I'm like, okay, like, I don't know. I personally wouldn't want somebody being like, well, like being the president of our country and saying like, I believe in this thing, and so now everybody else has to, and I'm going to sign executive orders into place to make sure that everyone has to follow the Catholic beliefs because I'm Catholic and I'm the president, right? And that would go with any religion. I would not want somebody to get into office and then force legislation upon the country based on their own religion. I feel as if that shouldn't be a radical idea, but I don't know, maybe Harrison is not a fan of separation of church and state.
This is an important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it. These are the sorts of things we are told in polite society to not bring up. You know, the difficult and unpleasant things. But if we are going to be men and women for this time in history, we need to stop pretending that the Church of Nice is a winning proposition. We must always speak and act in charity, but never mistake charity for cowardice. It is safe to say that over the past few years, I've gained quite the reputation for speaking my mind. I never envisioned myself nor wanted to have this sort of a platform, but God has given it to me, so I have no other choice but to embrace it and preach more hard truths about accepting your lane and staying in it. As members of the church founded by Jesus Christ, it is our duty and ultimately privilege to be authentically and unapologetically Catholic. Don't be mistaken, even within the church, people in polite Catholic circles will try to persuade you to remain silent. There even was an award-winning film called Silence, made by a fellow Catholic, wherein one of the main characters, a Jesuit priest, abandoned the church and as an apostate, when he died, is seen grasping a crucifix, quiet and unknown to anyone but God. As a friend of Benedictine College, His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron said in his review of the film, it was exactly what the cultural elite want to see in Christianity: private, hidden away, and harmless. Our Catholic faith has always been countercultural. Our Lord, along with countless followers, were all put to death.
Could he give us an example of the cultural elite wanting Christians to be quiet and like dying off into obscurity? The thing that pops into my head is probably a few years back when a lot of conservatives said that they were getting shadow banned, and I'm sure that did happen. I'm sure the algorithms of different social media platforms did suppress their content depending on what it was about. But I don't think a lot of that was related to being Christians and like proclaiming their faith. I think it was about kind of reckless and irresponsible information that was being spread by those people. It was like politically motivated. I don't think those things were religiously motivated.
For their adherence to her teachings. The world around us says that we should keep our beliefs to ourselves whenever they go against the tyranny of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We fear speaking truth because now, unfortunately, truth is in the minority. Congress just passed a bill where stating something as basic as the biblical teaching of who killed Jesus could land you in jail. But make no mistake, before we even attempt to fix any of the issues plaguing society, we must first get our own house in order, and it starts.
Wait, what? I think Harrison might be a little bit confused here. There is no legislation being passed in America that threatens people with jail time for stating, quote unquote, who killed Jesus. I don't even know where to start the second of all point on this. He's referring to Jews. This is a common anti-Semitic attack that people will level against Jews. It's like, oh, well, your people are the ones who killed Jesus. And it's a ridiculous take to have. It is a ridiculous, like, phrase to launch against somebody. Because if you understand the Bible and the way that Jesus' life was supposed to happen, he was supposed to die. Okay, so something that Christians believe, and Catholics are a part of Christianity, so I'm assuming Harrison and I are on like a level playing field with this, is that Jesus came to earth to fulfill a prophecy in which he lives a blameless life and dies for our sins, is resurrected a few days later, and ascends into heaven. And because of that sacrifice, that's what allows us to also experience redemption and eternal life. So kind of the whole point of Jesus coming to earth is to make that sacrifice, is to die for our sins. And so to use it as an insult to be anti-Semitic is just something that doesn't make sense to me. It's like this was supposed to happen. This was supposed to be part of Jesus's story. And so it's just like Jesus was supposed to die. That was the whole point of him like coming to earth, was like that was going to be a part of his story. And so I don't know, like it just doesn't make sense to me to be like, oh well, you know who killed Jesus, right? Because second of all, Pontius Pilate's the one who allowed it to happen, and he was Roman. So what do you want me to say to that? And just to add on to that, if you'll indulge me for a moment so we can have some nerdy Bible history time. When we talk about Jesus' crucifixion, he was betrayed by one of his own followers, Judas, and Judas engaged in a plot that was kind of like created by some Jewish leaders, not the Jewish people as a whole, not every Jew in Judea, some Jewish leaders who had an issue with Jesus's teachings. And this is like something that's way more complex than I have the time to get into or the knowledge to like fully explain. But Roman leadership was very oppressive at this time, and so there were prophecies in the Jewish belief system that somebody was going to come and they were going to overthrow that government. And so there were quite a few people already who had been like perceived to be that person that was coming to overthrow the government, and like they had started mini revolutions, there had been outbreaks in violence, and those people had ended up being crucified. And so these people were like, Jesus is causing a problem, we've got an issue here, like we need to take care of this. And so they collaborated, which collaborated sounds like a weird word to use, but got together with Judas and they were like, hey, we got to hand Jesus over. We need to have him crucified so he stops, basically. And so they ended up taking him to Pontius Pilate, the governor of Judea at the time, and basically being like, take him, he should be crucified. And Pontius Pilate was like, well, what has he done? Like, you say that he claims he's the king of the Jews. Is this true? Is this who you claim that you are? Like, are these charges true that people are leveling against you? And Jesus basically says like, well, that's what you say. Jesus isn't admitting to anything. He's not like, yep, I am the king of the Jews, I'm proclaiming this. Like, he just says, that's what you say. So this entire thing is happening publicly. This occurred during a festival before Passover. And so there's a pretty big crowd. It's a festival, like I said. And Pontius Pilate is essentially like, I can't really find a reason to crucify Jesus. He's not responding to any of these accusations. Like, I could let him go. I know you turned him over to me as a prisoner, but we could go ahead and let him go and this could be done with, basically. And the crowd did not want that. And so he saw the crowd was like against this and kind of getting worked up. And basically, Pontius Pilate was just like, well, it's easier to kind of go along with this, is what we can infer from the passages in the Bible that discuss this. And so he physically went over and washed his hands in front of the crowd and said, I wash my hands of this, but do what you have to do. So from there, Pilate had Jesus flogged. He handed him over to the Roman soldiers who then tortured Jesus and ended up crucifying him. And at the time, people would have like a kind of a plate that said what they were being crucified for, like what their crime was. And Jesus is said, King of the Jews. So based on that and everything else leading up to it, Jesus basically was killed for the crime of sedition, of going up against the Roman government. So I just think it's like kind of ridiculous for anyone who takes their faith seriously to throw something out like that, to just be like, oh, well, the Jews killed Jesus. Because it's like, no, like it's just so much more complex than that. And it's very frustrating to see somebody be on stage and be like, wow, you could go to jail for talking about who really killed Jesus, when that, again, first of all, like just the ridiculousness of that statement, plus the fact that that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen in America. You're not going to go to jail for saying something like that. And just to further clarify the point, I will link this in the description box. There's like a fact check from USA Today, because this has been something that I've seen a lot of people talking about. Is like, a bill was passed, it's going to outlaw the New Testament, which is what I'm assuming Harrison's referring to. But again, that's not happening. But the USA Today article says, In early May, the House approved legislation that, if enacted, would expand the definition of anti-Semitism that the Department of Education uses when it investigates discrimination against Jews on college campuses. It passed with some bipartisan support amid a wave of protests on college campuses over Israel's war in Gaza. The bill's fate in Senate is uncertain, the Associated Press reported. The article goes on to say, but Richard Painter, a University of Minnesota law professor, told USA Today that the legislation doesn't outlaw the New Testament at all, nor would it ban the religious text from federally funded institutions. Quote, "You're not banning something, you're conditioning federal funds on something," end quote, Painter said. Quote, "That's different than banning it," end quote. While certain passages of the New Testament could potentially be interpreted in ways that fit the bill's definition of anti-Semitism, quote, "That doesn't mean the New Testament itself would meet the definition of anti-Semitism," end quote, Painter said. So, again, I'm going to link this whole thing in the description box if you want to read it, but no, there's not legislation being passed that's going to ban from, the New Testament. Anyway, back to this.
With our leaders. The bishops and priests appointed by God as our spiritual fathers must be rightly ordered. There's not enough time today for me to list all the stories of priests and bishops misleading their flocks, but none of us can blame ignorance anymore and just blindly proclaim that that's what fathers said. Because sadly, many priests we are looking to for leadership are the same ones who prioritize their hobbies or even photos with their dogs and matching outfits for the parish directory. It's easy for us laymen and women to think that in order for us to be holy, that we must be active in our parish and try to fix it. Yes, we absolutely should be involved in supporting our parishes, but we cannot be the source for our parish priests to lean on to help with their problems. Just as we look at the relationship between a father and his son, so too should we look at the relationship between a priest and his people. It would not be appropriate for me to always be looking to my son for help when it is my job as his father to lead him. St. Jose Maria Escriva states that priests are ordained to serve and should not yield to temptation to imitate lay people, but to be priests through and through. Tragically, so many priests revolve much of their happiness from the adulation they receive from their parishioners, and in searching for this, they let their guard down and become overly familiar. This undue familiarity will prove to be problematic every time, because as my teammate's girlfriend says, familiarity breeds contempt. St. Jose Maria continues that...
What? Okay. I'm just wondering, maybe this is me, having gone to a non-religious university, but I'm like, why are we talking about this at a graduation? I understand that he's wanting to inspire people of the same faith as him to take some kind of action. He's seeing an issue within their collective church that he would like addressed. But I'm like, this is a graduation. This should be like a go out there and get them Tiger speech. This is a liberal arts college. Tell them to go out into their chosen field, make a difference, give it their best, and have a good life. They just spent 4 years studying and working for this achievement, and now you're going to sit here and tell them that, they can't be complacent because of an issue that you perceive to be happening in the world and in your church. This is not what I would want to hear at my college graduation. I would not want to hear, it's time for you to step up and fix this perceived issue within the church. I'd be like, I'm just trying to go out and be a good graphic designer. Give me an atta girl, pat my back, let's go. Plus, quoting Taylor Swift, familiarity breeds contempt. That's from Bejeweled. A song about, that's an empowerment song, basically. That's a woman's empowerment song. And he just says, like my teammate's girlfriend says, familiarity breeds contempt. What's the point of including that? Not only that phrase, but then also referring to Taylor Swift, who is famous, independent of her relationship with Travis Kelce, as my teammate's girlfriend.
Some want to see the priest as just another man. That is not so. They want to find in the priest those virtues proper to every Christian, and indeed every honorable man: understanding, justice, a life of work, priestly work in this instance, and good manners. It is not prudent as the laity for us to consume ourselves in becoming amateur theologians so that we can decipher this or that theological teaching, unless, of course, you are a theology major. We must be intentional with our focus on our estate in life and our own vocation. And for most of us, that's as married men and women. Still, we have so many great resources at our fingertips that it doesn't take long to find traditional and timeless teachings that haven't been ambiguously reworded for our times.
I'm understanding what he just said as most men and women's vocation will be as a married person. All right, I think I'm tracking where he's going with this.
Plus, there are still many good and holy priests, and it's up to us to seek them out. The chaos of the world is unfortunately reflected in the chaos in our parishes, and sadly, in our cathedrals too. As we saw during the pandemic, too many bishops were not leaders at all. They were motivated by fear of being sued, fear of being removed, fear of being disliked. They showed by their actions, intentional or unintentional, that the sacraments don't actually matter. Because of this, countless people died alone without access to the sacraments, and it's a tragedy we must never forget. As Catholics, we can look to so many examples of heroic shepherds who gave their lives for their people, and ultimately, the church. We cannot buy into the lie that the things we experienced during COVID were appropriate. Over the centuries, there have been great wars, great famines, and yes, even great diseases, all that came with a level of lethality and danger. But in each of those examples, church leaders leaned into their vocations and ensured that their people received the sacraments. Great saints like St. Damien of Malachi, who knew the dangers of his ministry, stayed for 11 years as a spiritual leader to the leper colonies of Hawaii. His heroism is looked at today as something set apart and unique, when ideally, it should not be unique at all. For as a father loves his child, so a shepherd should love his spiritual children too. That goes even more so for our bishops, these men who are present-day apostles. Our bishops once had adoring crowds of people kissing their rings and taking in their every word, but now relegate themselves to a position of inconsequential existence. Now,
I don't want what I'm about to say to come off as disrespectful towards Catholic leaders. I'm not Catholic, so I'm not trying to like make a statement on their leadership in specific. But don't we think that maybe that's a little bit much? Like to have a religious leader being somebody who people just want to like gather around and kiss their rings and take on every word. Isn't that giving them a little bit too much deference? Like, I don't know. For me, like that's not how I view the pastor at my church. And I respect him so much. I think that he is a great leader and I really enjoy listening to his teachings, but there are certain things that he says where I'm like, I don't know about that. I don't know if I think the same way on that thing. And my husband and I will like have conversations about it and we'll say like, what did you think when he said this? Like, here's how I feel about it. Here's how I took it. And we just have open conversations. It's not an expectation that, I mean, at least for me, that just because a pastor who I respect and who leads the church that I go to says something that I have to take that as truth because he's just a man. Like, yes, he is in leadership and I respect him and he is leading the church that I attend and that I go to engage in spiritual growth. But I'm not just going to be like, yep, whatever you say, like I'm taking it in, I'm on it. Can I come kiss your ring, please? So anyway, like just based on my own life experience and how I engage with religious institutions, that just really kind of threw me off of him being like, we used to have leaders who people would gather around and couldn't wait to kiss their rings. I'm like, whoa, maybe we shouldn't strive for that. Maybe that shouldn't be the ideal.
Bishop of a diocese or the Bishops' Conference as a whole puts out an important document on this matter or that. Nobody even takes a moment to read it, let alone follow it. No. Today, our shepherds are far more concerned with keeping the doors open to the chancery than they are with saying the difficult stuff out loud. It seems that the only time you hear from your bishops is when it's time for the annual appeal, whereas we need our bishops to be vocal about the teachings of the church, setting aside their own personal comfort and embracing their cross. Our bishops are not politicians, but shepherds. So instead of fitting in the world by going along to get along, they too need to stay in their lane and lead. I say all of this not from a place of anger, as we get the leaders we deserve. But this does make me reflect on staying in my lane and focusing on my own vocation and how I can be a better father and husband and live in the world, but not be of it. Focusing on my vocation while praying and fasting for these men will do more for the church than me complaining about her leaders. Because there seems to be so much confusion coming from our leaders, there needs to be concrete examples for people to look to in places like Benedictine, a little Kansas college built high on a bluff above the Missouri River, are showing the world how an ordered, Christ-centered existence is the recipe for success. You need to look no further than the examples all around this campus, where over the past 20 years, enrollment has doubled, construction and revitalization are a constant part of life, and people, the students, the faculty and staff, are thriving. This didn't happen by chance. In a deliberate movement to embrace traditional Catholic values, Benedictine has gone from just another liberal arts school with nothing to set it apart to a thriving beacon of light and a reminder to us all that when you embrace tradition, success, worldly and spiritual, will follow. I am certain the reporters at the AP could not have imagined that their attempt to rebuke and embarrass places and people like those here at Benedictine wouldn't be met with anger, but instead met with excitement and pride. Not the deadly sin sort of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it, but the true God-centered pride that is cooperating with the Holy Ghost to glorify Him. Reading that article,
I was trying to sort through memories in my brain of Associated Press and Benedictine College. I'm like, what articles came out? What headlines were there? Did I see anything in passing? Just trying to think about what articles in particular he could have been referring to. And then I got snapped right back because he's like, and I'm not talking about Pride Month. What does this have to do with anything? To me, it seems like this entire speech was structured around hot button topics and keyword searches. So it's surrogacy, IVF, New Testament, ban, Pride Month, gay. What is the point in throwing these jabs out there other than to get a reaction out of people?
now shared all over the world, we see that in the complete surrender of self and a turning towards Christ, you will find happiness. Right here in a little town in Kansas, we find many inspiring lay people using their talents. President Minnis, Dr. Swafford, and Dr. Zimmerer are a few great examples right here on this very campus that will keep the light of Christ burning bright for generations to come. Being locked in with your vocation and staying in your lane is going to be the surest way for you to find true happiness and peace in this life. It is essential that we focus on our own state in life, whether that be as a layperson, a priest, or religious. Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2024, you are sitting at the edge of the rest of your lives. Each of you has the potential to leave a legacy that transcends yourselves and this era of human existence. In the small ways, by living out your vocation, you will ensure that God's church continues and the world is enlightened by your example. For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you.
How about we just don't? How about you just don't speak to them for a minute? Because I can already tell whatever you're going to say, I'm not going to like.
How many of you are sitting here now about to cross this stage and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead.
I guarantee you that those people are not thinking about oh my gosh, it's going to be so glamorous after I graduate. I'm going to get so many promotions and so many bonuses. It's I hope I can find a job. I hope I can find a job that allows me to support myself in not only in this job market, but in this economy. I wonder when my student loan payments are going to kick in. That's probably more so what's on their mind. If they don't have a job already, it's okay, what do we do next? How do we make this work? How do we make this happen? Not like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so glamorous to graduate. People who graduate, in most cases, are like, okay, like it's go time. I hope that I can do this.
Lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel,
Maybe,
would be
maybe
the
not.
first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker.
Okay. That's great for her. I'm glad that that worked out for Isabel. Like, truly, if that's what she wanted to do with her life, then that is amazing. That's great. If that's what Isabel wanted out of her life, then that's great. That's amazing. Like, I'm really glad that you guys found each other and that she gets to be a stay-at-home mom and a homemaker, and clearly you make enough money for that to be able to happen. That's amazing. But just because that's what is apparently right for you and your wife doesn't mean that that's what everyone wants out of their own lives. I just think it's a little bit demeaning to talk to these women who have just spent the last 4 years working really hard towards a goal, and to, instead of congratulate them on that, you're being like, well, cool, you did it, but I can guarantee you're going to be happier once you get married and have kids. That's not for everybody. That's something that I don't get, like, especially with modern day Christians, is like there's a real heavy focus on getting married and having kids as if that's what's supposed to happen for everybody, when we have clear biblical examples of people remaining single throughout their entire lives. Like, we have a very clear example in Paul of somebody who was unmarried and apparently celibate. And so why is it that, like, we're pushing the narrative of the greatest thing that you can do in life is to get married and have kids, when we know based on our religious text that that's not what is meant for everyone? And also, just in general, what is the rush? And I think this is something that is especially hitting a nerve with me, because I've been married for 8 years and I'm just now having my first kid. And it's not because we've been trying for 8 years and we've been unsuccessful up until now. We didn't start trying until last year. So, while I did get married young, we definitely didn't rush into having children. We were very intentional about waiting. And I think that if I'd gotten pregnant prior to now, like, it would have been fine. We would have done whatever we had to do to, like, figure it out and make sure that everything was good, and it would have been great. And we would have been super happy to have a kid. But the fact of the matter is, we were holding off. We were like, we're not quite ready yet. We're not quite ready yet. Like, we just want to hold off for a little bit. And I think that that worked out really well for us. It allowed us to have the time and the energy and the resources to do kinship foster care when that was asked of us. And yeah, we could have done that with a kid if we had kids of our own. I assume that, like, it still would have been something that we were able to do. But because we didn't have other kids, it really allowed us to put a ton of our time and our energy and our focus into them, and to doing things for them, and to, like, being there for what they needed, not only, like, emotionally and physically, but the things that were required by the state and different visitations. Like, it made it so that we could put our focus and our energy in that, instead of also having to balance our own kids and their emotional needs as well. Like, we can pour everything into these kids that are here right now. Aside from that, there are plenty of other reasons that I think it was right for us to wait to try and have kids. And so it's just like, everybody has to do things in their own timing. You can't say that, like, because of a religious expectation, this is what you should do with your life, this is how you should operate. Your main focus really should be on getting married and having kids, because your life's really not going to start until then. Like, that just financially, economically, that might not be something that's a smart choice for people right now, is to like get married and rush to have kids before they're financially stable. And I understand, like, you're never going to be ready to have kids. It's never going to be the right time. There's always going to be unknowns and unpredictable things. And absolutely, absolutely there will be. But I can tell you, like, I feel much more prepared now to face challenges than I might have when I was 21 and I had just gotten married. You know, life is unpredictable. You never know what it's going to throw at you. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't prepare for the things that you can prepare for. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be like, how can I be responsible for my own choices today? Just a thought, you know. But Harrison Butker said that these women should just get married and have kids. So I guess forget the thing that they spent the last 4 years working towards. It's fine.
She's a primary educator to our children. She's the one who ensures I never let football or my business become a distraction from that of a husband and father. She is the person that knows me best at my core, and it is through our marriage that, Lord willing, we will both attain salvation. I say all of this to you because I have seen it firsthand, how much happier someone can be when they disregard the outside noise and move closer and closer to God's will in their life. Isabel's dream of having a career might not have come true, but if you asked her...
Wait. Okay, so he just said, like, he's seen how much happier people can be when they follow God's will for their lives. That doesn't mean that God's will for everyone's life is the same. Doesn't mean that his will for everybody is to get married and have kids right away. And then he's like, she might not have gotten to follow her dream of having a career. What did she want to do? What was her career aspiration? I understand that not everybody can do everything at the same time, but like, I don't know. Did she have something that she was like really passionate about? And you were like, sorry, hun. You got to have kids instead and homeschool them. Because he said that she was the primary educator. So to me, that makes it seem like they're being homeschooled.
Today, if she has any regrets on her decision, she would laugh out loud without hesitation and say, heck no. As a man who gets a lot of praise and has been given a platform to speak to audiences.
Is that sincere, or is that her just accepting the path that she's chosen and being like, no, I love it, it's amazing? Or maybe she really does love it, but there's still like a sense of, oh, I wish I'd gotten to do this thing before we had kids, or like I wish I knew what my life would look like if I had gotten the chance to pursue this career option.
Is like this one today. I pray that I always use my voice for God and not for myself. Everything I am saying to you is not from a place of wisdom, but rather a place of experience. I am hopeful that these words will be seen as those from a man not much older than you, who feels it is imperative that this class, this generation, and this time in our society must stop pretending that the things we see around us are normal. Heterodox ideas abound even within Catholic circles, for let's be honest, there is nothing good about playing God with having children, whether that be your ideal number or the perfect time to conceive. No matter how you spin it, there is nothing natural about Catholic birth control. It is only in the past few years that I have grown encouraged to speak more boldly and directly, because as I mentioned earlier, I have leaned into my vocation as a husband and father, and as a man.
Do you think this guy has had braces? I'm just wondering. Maybe he has veneers. Sounds a little bit like he has veneers. I don't know. I can't say that for sure, but he's got like that veneer voice. I understand that most practicing Catholics do also abide by that. Like, birth control is off limits. It's not up to us. Like, it's up to God how many kids that we have. And I don't know. I go back and forth on that. Like, for me, I'm like, you do you. As long as you're not hurting yourself or somebody else, like, you are free to have whatever belief that you feel is right for you and right for your family. But I think there are limits on it. Like, when we look at Carissa Collins and the fact that she has had so many medical scares and still continues to have kids, and that her kids seem to be I hate to say this, like, I don't like leveling accusations like this against anybody, but it seems like there's a little bit of medical neglect going on in certain cases. Just certain things that have happened with her kids where they did not receive medical care in a prompt fashion. And then not only that, but like the fact that it is so expensive. She has like 11 kids. It's so expensive to raise that many kids. And if you can do it, if you have the money to do it, okay, I still have a concern about how much one-on-one time you're getting with your kids and if you're parentifying the older ones, especially the daughters. But in their case, they don't. Like, they don't have enough money to comfortably house, feed, entertain, educate all of these kids. They've relied on donations. Shaq has bought them a new Sprinter van. Like, they rely on the kindness of other people to help them provide for their kids. And I understand that everybody needs help every now and then. Like, there's nothing wrong with being like, hey, we're going through a tough time, and reaching out and getting help, whether it's government help, help from friends, help from family, like whatever it is. Right? I'm not trying to like shame that. But to continue to choose to have children and to do nothing to prevent that when you know that the way that you're providing for them is from other people's kindness. Because Kirsten says, like, well, just have the kids and God will provide, instead of she and her husband being the ones to be like, hey, how can we make sure that we're providing for our kids? It's like, well, God will provide. God will provide other people to give you money to raise your kids. And that's what she's saying, because that's what her experience has been so far. So I'm not trying to get into like a hole of the college kids, or like a rabbit hole of quiverful beliefs. But again, everyone can have like their own beliefs as long as you're not hurting yourselves or someone else. And I think in certain cases, if you are adamantly against birth control or any sort of like control over conception or like preventing pregnancy, whether that's by tracking your cycle or using condoms, whatever it may be, if you're just like, we're throwing all caution to the wind, that can at some point not become a healthy belief to have. And then, of course, he's talking negatively about doing IVF or surrogacy. And the reason I asked if he had braces or if he had veneers is because I'm like, okay, so you're cool with like medical assistance in certain things, but not in other things. And my assumption would be like, well, not my assumption, my question would be, well, if you want people to get married and have kids, and they're not able to have kids, and they think that IVF is right for them or that surrogacy is right for them, why would that be a problem? Because you want them to be married and have kids, yeah? Oh, are we saying that because people who are gay use surrogates? Is that why? Is it maybe not so much about like the principle of the thing? It's about who's using that resource. Is that it? Is that the issue? Because I don't know. Explain it to me. I think it's fair to have a conversation about ethical surrogacy and making sure that the woman who is providing this service and the couple that she is providing it for are all on the same page. They understand the expectations. They understand, like, if we get this genetic testing done and this is what comes back, we're on the same page of what will happen in that instance, so that way there's no surprises. And of course, like, you can't account for everything, but just like making sure that you guys are working as a team, that you're on the same page, and that this woman is being treated fairly and ethically and not being exploited for money because she's in a vulnerable position, and it really is something that she's doing because she understands the gravity of it and she wants to provide that service for someone. Like, we can have conversations about that, but I'm gonna assume that his real issue with things like IVF and surrogacy is that gay couples use those services, and so he's probably having an issue with it from that standpoint. If I had to guess, he's not outright saying it, but I'm like, logically, I would assume that that's where you're going with it. So it's not necessarily that you have an issue with You wouldn't have an issue probably with cis heterosexual couples engaging in those services because you want them to have kids. And if they can't have kids, they're not entering their true vocation. Their life hasn't started yet. So, like, you would want them to do that, yeah? It's like I don't think he has an issue with medical care or medical assistance when it aligns with his beliefs or when it goes towards something that's beneficial to him. But if you're using it in a way that doesn't align with his beliefs, then he's like, hold on, whoa, whoa, whoa. We gotta put a stop to this. All right, we got about 5 minutes left of this. Let's finish strong, y'all. We made it this far. We can do it.
Gentlemen, here today, part of what plagues our society is this lie that has been told to you that men are not necessary in the home or in our communities. As men, we set the tone of the culture, and when that is absent, disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in. This absence of men in the home is what plays a large role in the violence we see all around the nation. Other countries do not have nearly the same absentee father rates as we find here in the US, and a correlation could be made in their drastically lower violence rates as well. Be unapologetic in your masculinity.
Well, correlation doesn't exactly equal causation, but I don't know. Digging into it deeper probably wouldn't align with his narrative.
Fighting against the cultural emasculation of men. Do hard things. Never settle for what is easy. You might have a talent that you don't necessarily enjoy, but if it glorifies God, maybe you should lean into that over something that you might think suits you better. I speak from experience as an introvert who now finds myself as an amateur public speaker and an entrepreneur, something I never thought I'd be when I received my industrial engineering degree. The road ahead is bright. Things are changing, society is shifting, and people, young and old, are embracing tradition. Not only has it been my vocation that has helped me and those closest to me, but not surprising to many of you, should be my outspoken embrace of the traditional Latin Mass. I've been very vocal in my love and devotion to the TLM and its necessity for our lives. But what I think gets misunderstood is that people who attend the TLM do so out of pride or preference. I can speak to my own experience, but for most people I have come across within these communities, this simply is not true. I do not attend the TLM because I think I am better than others, or for the smells and bells, or even for the love of Latin. I attend the TLM because I believe, just as the God of the Old Testament was pretty particular in how he wanted to be worshiped, the same holds true for us today. It is through the TLM that I encountered order and began to pursue it in my own life. Aside from the TLM itself, too many of our sacred traditions have been relegated to things of the past, when in my parish, things such as Ember Days, days when we fast and pray for vocations and for our priests, are still adhered to. The TLM is so essential that I would challenge each of you to pick a place to move where it is readily available. A lot of people have complaints about the parish or the community, but we should not sacrifice the Mass for community. I prioritize the TLM even if the parish isn't beautiful, the priest isn't great, or the community isn't amazing. I still go to the TLM because I believe the holy sacrifice of the Mass is more important than anything else. I say this knowing full well that when each of you rekindle your knowledge and adherence to many of the church's greatest traditions, you will see how much more colorful and alive your life can and should be. As you move on from this place and enter into the world, know that you will face many.
Okay, so if you're Catholic, please feel free to educate me because I'm not trying to be ignorant. It's just not something that I'm super familiar with. So I did look it up, and it looks like the traditional Latin Mass first started being performed in the 2nd century. So that would have started at like 101 AD, which is after Jesus died. And so maybe there's elements of certain things from the Old Testament that are brought into the traditional Latin Mass. But that phrasing, like just the phrasing that he used and what he said just kind of confused me.
Challenges. Sadly, I'm sure many of you know of the countless stories of good and active members of this community who, after graduation and moving away from the Benedictine bubble, have ended up moving in with their boyfriend or girlfriend prior to marriage. Some even leave the church and abandon God. It is always heartbreaking to hear these stories, and there's a desire to know what happened and what went wrong. What you must remember is that life is about doing the small things well, setting yourself up for success, and surrounding yourself with people who continually push you to be the best version of you. I say this all the time, that iron sharpens iron. It's a great reminder that those closest to us should be making us better. If you are dating someone who doesn't even share your faith, how do you expect that person to help you become a saint? If your friend group is filled with people who only think about what you're doing next weekend and are not willing to have those difficult conversations, how can they help sharpen you? As you prepare to enter into the workforce, it is extremely important that you actually think about the places you are moving to. Who is the bishop? What kind of parishes are there? Do they offer the TLM and have priests who embrace their priestly vocation? Cost of living must not be the only arbiter of your choices, for a life without God is not a life at all, and the cost of salvation is worth more than any career. I'm excited for the future, and I pray that something I have said will resonate as you move on to the next chapter of your life. Never be afraid to profess the one holy, Catholic, and Apostolic Church, for this is the church that Jesus Christ established, through which we receive sanctifying grace. I know that my message today had a little less fluff than is expected for these speeches, but I believe that this audience and this venue is the best place to speak openly and honestly about who we are and where we all want to go, which is heaven. I thank God for Benedictine College and for the example it provides to the world. I thank God for men like President Minnis who are doing their part for the kingdom. Come to find out, you can have.
If you think that this is a perfect place to relay that message, then ask them if you can come do like a weeknight event. Like, oh, guest speaker Harrison BUTKER comes to talk about the importance of living out your faith after graduation. Like, don't do this at their graduation ceremony.
Have an authentically Catholic college and a thriving football program. Make no mistake, you are entering into mission territory in a post-God world, but you were made for this, and with God by your side and a constant striving for virtue within your vocation, you too can be a saint. Christ is King to the heights.
Oh, they're standing. He's getting a standing ovation. Well, that was a speech. I understand why it got a lot of the backlash that it got. And my main gripe with this still stands. This is a graduation. This is a celebration. This is something like these these adults have worked, these young adults have worked really hard over the past 4 years to get their degree. They are embarking on a completely new chapter of their lives. They are some of them probably are like on it. They got it. Like they know what they're doing after graduation. They have a plan. But I'm sure a lot of them are feeling a little bit lost, a little bit scared, and kind of like unsure of where to go from here. And instead of encouraging them and telling them that even though they're going to have some rough patches and things might not work out exactly how they imagine them to, they're going to be okay. And they got it. Like, they're skilled, they're competent, you believe in them, and they should go out there and give it their best. You're like, things are falling apart and you can't be complacent. So let's make sure you get it together. Let's start respecting men more because they set the tone for the culture, and we're letting them like flounder. We're telling them that they can't be masculine, and so because they're not allowed to live in their masculinity, that's a problem. Women, I know you're here. I know you just got your degrees, but like, your life really isn't going to start until you become a mom. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, the world's kind of falling apart. Do your part to fix it. Like, I would have been so upset if that was my graduation speech. If I was like graduating from college and that was the commencement address, I'd be like, cool. Yeah. Let's leave. Let's go out to eat because I need some chips and salsa now. Like, oh gosh. Well, he said it. That's what he said. I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on all of the points of that speech. And now I'm just excited because I can finally go watch the Friday episode of Do We Know Them? Because they also talked about this. And I was like, like I usually watch it on Friday, like the day that those episodes come out on Friday and Monday. And so when I saw that's what they were covering on Friday, I was like, oh, I can't watch this because I didn't want to watch it until I had filmed this video. But now I get to go watch it. So I'm excited. That's what I'm going to go ahead and do. Like I said, I want to hear your thoughts on his speech and the things that we discussed throughout the video. So if you are watching this on YouTube, you can leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you are listening to this on Spotify, you can leave anything that you want to say in the Q&A for this particular episode. And while you are doing that, if you would consider liking this video or subscribing to my channel or leaving the podcast a rating or a review, that would be incredible. And if you have done any of those things already, thank you so much. I am so appreciative of you, and I love being able to just sit here, hang out with you, and talk about whatever. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Please be kind to people, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.